Boys, I think Loki actually betrayed us, bro. All right. Let me slow down. All right. So in 1152, right before the flashback starts, we basically get Hiruden and Loki going back and forth, yada yada, right? Brothers doing brother stuff. But I found this bubble of dialogue really interesting. It says, "You more or less already did that once. How can I possibly trust you?" That is italicized and boldened, alluding to betraying Elbath. And the interesting thing here is that Loki does not refute this claim by Hiruden. So that line is actually in reference to joining the world government as well, not just betraying Elbath. But this bubble really hasn't been referred to since then, and honestly, it's probably like just referring to Loki, like the whole events of Harald's death. But what if it's not? And that's kind of what I'm here to talk about today. You know what I'm saying? So, as of right now, the clear scene we have of Harald's death is the one in 1152, right before the flashback starts, where we see a few different things. We see a few key things here, so I'm going to go through them. There's four key things that I think are important to like interpreting. Okay, is there more to like what Hiruden said, or is it just surface level? So, thing number one is Jarl getting stabbed. We see that like sword going through the man's head, blood splatter. Number two, we see a guard screaming for help and the door being locked. Like that's why he's screaming for help. And then thing number three, we see someone, we know Oda in his silhouettes, we see someone standing over the legendary devil fruit of Elbath that's been referenced and mentioned, I feel like a million times. And then, of course, like thing number four, we see Harald getting impaled. So, when it comes to Loki betraying Elbath, he could, and I want to put emphasis on could in this scenario, because I don't really think he did all of these things like in some evil nature way, but by the way Oda framed this, he could be responsible for all of it. And I just want to emphasize that he could be responsible for it. But I just don't think he was, especially because like I don't think Harald died in that scene where he's being impaled by all the soldiers, right? Like if he had, I don't think we'd really get anything else like from it. I think it would just be he died, and we're not going to see someone standing over the fruit. We won't see Jarl getting stabbed in the head. You know what I mean? So realistically, I see this unfolding a few different ways, but I'm going to go the way where I think it's like the most realistic. I think this is probably where Oda's taking it, but I also have a way I kind of see it that I kind of want to run through in a second. But realistically, the way I see this unfolding is Harald being killed by Loki after like fighting Jarl and Loki together. You know, Harald is like under Emu's command, so he can't really resist. And that's kind of what causes Jarl to get stabbed in the head. And then that sword being ran through his head it impairs his memory, and Loki's the only one who is able to remember. He's the only one left alive there to speak for what happens. And so I think that's kind of how that goes down. Like Loki, after Jarl gets stabbed, Loki kind of is able to finish things off on his own. And I think that's the simple, like obvious conclusion, like the most straightforward one. But what if? And this is like kind of where I think this goes. I could be wrong here. Sorry for the sniffles and the low volume. I'm overcoming a cold. So, personally though, here's how I think this goes down. I think the other angle here is everything up until where Harald gets impaled is still the same. That I don't think changes. But from there, let's say this happens, right? Emu sends somebody through the abyss to fight alongside Harald. a God's Night. Maybe one we've seen, maybe one we haven't, right? I don't really think that part's all important yet based off of what we have so far. But Emu sends somebody through the abyss. Emu doesn't necessarily have to Domi Reversi Harald because Harald can't physically resist yet. Like if he does Domi him, it would be for the power boost alone, right? So there's that. And from here, I think it goes a few different ways. So we either get Harald in this God's Night versus Loki and Jarl, or we get this God's Night who gets Domi reversied for the power amp versus Harald, Loki, and Jarl. I think in this scenario, Harald's going to have to find a way to break free from Emu's control. And the God's Night would have to be Domi'd in this scenario because then no one's taking on Harald and Loki without being stupidly strong, right? And then you throw Jarl into the mix. Come on now. So for this scenario, the God's Night is gonna need to be Domi'd. But this scenario, like the God's Knights versus the three of them, the three giants, I think it would go and check all of our factors, right? So this would explain like someone locking the door and the guard having to yell for help. It would also explain Jarl being stabbed. I mean, that one can be done in either scenario. Like no matter how this goes, it happens, right? But it would be a plausible explanation, like someone did this to Jarl, right? That's not Harald or Loki. And then it would explain someone being over the devil fruit, like the hidden one that's locked away, right? We don't really know who because Oda and his silhouettes, am I right? But I would hit all of those points, and then obviously like Harald's death, right? But now, like I said, I think for this one, Harald's gonna have to find a way to break that control from Emu. That's the one thing in this scenario I feel like makes it a little unlikely, but you never know. You never know. Now, the reason I think there's a God's Night involved here is because Loki says he's experienced for himself that the God's Knights can be stopped. He says this in 1152 when Gaban is talking about Conqueror's Hockey, and like he's saying when he was telling like everyone there that Zoro has Conqueror's Hockey, basically. And Loki says he's experienced for himself that they're not immortal, they can be stopped. And at first, before 1168 came out, I was like, okay, there has to be a God's Night involved. But as of 1168, the latest chapter, Harald is revealed to be quote unquote immortal. So this could just be referring to him. That part is to be seen. I think we'll see that this upcoming chapter, or the next one after. But that dialogue makes me go, okay, the God's Night involved here. But as for how this ties into Loki betraying Elbaf for the world government, this could really be because the devil fruit most likely goes missing after all of this. I guess there's no real confirmation on that, but that's the assumption, right? Especially with Loki's hammer, Ragnar, all that. And then just the fact that Loki ends up out at sea, I guess after this, and then he rampages for 2 years, and then 6 years ago in story is when Shanks captures him, ties him up to the tree. So those two things together is like, okay, he betrayed Elbaf for the world government, the fruits involved, that kind of thing. But then there's also Loki's bounty. Like, we can't forget that he has a special 2.6 billion berry bounty. Like, it's a special bounty. Like, I think it says world government. It says something on there. We haven't ever seen it before in One Piece since, like, before Loki, and since then we haven't seen that. So perspective wise, that could make you think like, okay, he was with the government and betrayed them so bad they put a special bounty on him. Like, it could be that perspective thing. Ultimately, I really think it's all perspective. Like, if I had to give my very honest, straightforward, like, okay, I think this is where this is probably actually realistically gonna go, I think it's just a perspective thing. I think like Hiruden saying that just kind of stun locked Loki. I don't think it's anything more to it than what we already know. Like just the misconception that Loki was behind all of it. I think that's what that really boils down to. But it's fun to theorize, and that's kind of what I wanted to do here. And, like another thing that lends to it being perspective is just that Loki and Jarl are the only people alive that were there for the whole thing. So, and assuming Jarl's memory is impacted, it's like it's up in the air. It's up to Loki, right? And he was already mischievous, and people didn't like him, don't believe him. So, it's a perception thing. But I just kind of wanted to touch on that there. But yeah, let me know down below in the comments what you think happened, what actually happened, and if you could just do me a favor, hit that sub button if you enjoyed. Hit the like button. Whoa. That's the timer telling me I'm done. Hit that sub button, hit the like button if you enjoyed, so YouTube knows that I make good content. We're back from break this week, so I'll see y'all in the review, and y'all have a blessed day. I love you all. Peace.